Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hi, Libration Nation. It is not Tuesday, it is Saturday. I am releasing a special episode this week in honor of the 2-year anniversary of Drinks in the Library. The very first episode of Drinks in the Library came out February 20th, 2024. So we are coming up. We are right here. We're at 2 years. So this is a special episode. It is the Wuthering Heights film review recap. It does have spoilers. So if you have not seen the film yet and you plan on it, pause and go watch it. It's really good. I enjoyed it. I did this with Carrie Pruett, who did the Wuthering Heights book episode with me roughly a year ago. And I messaged her and said, "Are you going to see the film? It'd be so fun to talk to you after." And she said, "Let's go watch it together." So we did. And that was so much fun. Thank you to Carrie. Always love chatting with you. If you have seen the film and you did not like it, that is on you. That is your right. However, I pair this film, and this is 100% fact, the Wuthering Heights Emerald Fennell adaptation pairs perfectly with a extremely dark red wine, red blend, a Zinfandel. You want to have those brambly, earthy notes, and you need to pair it with a dark chocolate with raspberry. Pairs 100% perfectly. Like I said, if you don't like the film, that's your choice. However, anyone that disagrees with me on this film and wine and chocolate pairing, I'll see you in court. Thank you so much. Again, I can't believe it's been 2 years. I'm so grateful. I appreciate you. Enjoy. Thank you to Carrie. Have a great day. Okay, Wuthering Heights, Part 2.
Hello. I've decided I think of just with my, upper South accent, I've been saying wuthering my whole life.
Okay.
But they definitely said wuthering in the movie, and I'm like, I think that's how like Yorkshire, the North England, they would have the wuthering. So I need to learn it.
Okay, I think mine is just like a little southern twang.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Wuthering.
Wuthering. But it's not a there's definitely in there.
Wuthering. Yeah. So we just saw the movie and we're gonna jump into it a little bit. I guess we're just like talk about a little bit. I went and looked. You and I recorded the Wuthering Heights book episode almost exactly a year ago. It was a year ago last week. So here we are. I don't remember the weather that day. It is horrible, rainy, cold today.
It is definitely wuthering right now.
It's wuthering. And so, yeah, I realized a couple weeks ago, I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something for the movie. It's so popular. Everyone's talking about it. And I was like, Carrie, are you going to see it? And you're like, well, why don't we just go see it together? So we did today.
Just got out.
We just got out, and my friend Valerie came with us, friend of the show, so she liked the movie. I think I want to talk first about what I thought I was going to get, and then we can talk about what it actually was. How do we feel about that?
That sounds great.
Okay. So I thought it was going to be Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola. What did you think?
I expected less fidelity to the book, actually. I thought it would be kind of like the emphasis on the dancing and the costumes and things like that. And there was a little bit of it, but it was more of a straight up, like they changed some plot stuff just I think because you need to because of the length and the amount of stuff that happens in the book. So I was still in suspense despite knowing the plot because you don't know what note they're going to end on.
Yeah.
But there were parts that I'm pretty sure it was just dialogue out of the book, which was not what I had expected at all. So those parts are there, like the sort of fancy, like just the modern music and the sort of just pastiche on the costumes and everything like that. But it was a lot less of that than I think they put a lot of that in the trailer. But the most of the movie is basically just an adaptation of the book.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely darker, and so talking about the drink that we picked, so I didn't know what it was gonna be. When we did the book, we picked a Sam Smith brown beer because that's a Yorkshire beer, and that fit the book better, but, like, before the movie, I told you, "Well, I might have to go buy ingredients to make Cosmos because I feel like that's what I'm getting from the trailer," and it is not Cosmos.
It is not.
So I went between us watching the movie and coming here to record. I went to Total Wine, which is here in Bonnier, and you and I both kind of were like, "I'm feeling red wine. There's lots of red. There's some blood."
Yep, I was coming out first of all, I was like, Bloody Mary, but that's too
Mhm.
Catholic, but at least there is blood toward the end of the movie that I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a lot of blood."
Yeah.
And, yeah, so I'm always, down for red wine. This is quite good.
Yeah, so I went to Total Wine and I was trying to figure out, and I was looking at like the Red Blend Zinfandel spot. And I have to tell you, so we live like 2 miles from the local Total Wine. Like I said, it's here in Bonnier. And I am a mark for them. They see me coming like a mile away. They're like, "Oh, she's back." But they're wonderful. And so he saw me looking and he came up, one of my regular friends there. And he was like, "Oh, did you come to the wine and chocolates class that we had?" I said, "I missed them." And so he suggested this bottle. I'm trying to stay near the mic. It's called Stories and Spells by Witching Hour. And he said with the class that that was the most popular. And I have this for you here with dark chocolate raspberry.
Is there a chocolate reference in the movie?
I feel like yes.
When she writes
Yes.
is
Mhm.
it like Kathy is writing the fancy stuff she wants when she's a rich lady and she underlined chocolate?
Yeah. Well, she goes to the Linton's house
Right.
and she's like being spoiled for the first time in her life. And that's what she comes back and she's like, "They have chocolate." Anyway, I don't know if you want to try it with it.
Sure, sure. I don't know if Emily Bronte ever had chocolate in her life, though I was from my first appearance, there were a couple things that it was listened to by my friends who are more Bronte heads than I am.
Oh, okay.
So I think I referenced to them living their whole lives in the Parsons cottage on the moors, and
Mhm.
I was reminded at least, and I'm not sure if it was Emily, but at least two of the sisters went and were governesses in the Netherlands or
Oh,
Belgium.
okay.
See, I didn't do any of the research on it, but anyway, but they had lived in Europe, didn't like it much, and came
Mm,
back. But that was, yeah, I think Charlotte Bronte's novel Villette. I think Villette, the city that she refers to, is supposed to be Brussels, I believe.
okay.
So they probably tried some chocolate. Like that's sort
Okay.
of it. You would have that on the continent. And then the other thing is, I didn't mention Anne at all, and I feel like I should do some justice for Anne, who
Oh,
was the other
yes.
sister. Who,
Uh-huh.
and I after I was on for Wuthering Heights, I did go and read Agnes Grey because I had never read any Anne Bronte before. It because it was the shortest one. It was not that great. So I'm like, I think I have to try Tentative Wildfell Hall next because that is her like best known one.
Okay. Well, Justice for Anne, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. So Girardelli,
It's what they had at Total Wine. It's the Ghirardelli.
I think Kathy would be enjoying this very much.
Yeah, I was very nervous because a lot of times when I'm preparing for episodes, like I have a lot of time to think, and this was really like, see the movie, pick the drink. But this is it. I think I nailed it. A dark red blend. If you want to go with stories and spells, I recommend it. And dark chocolate raspberry. That's really good.
So yes, there's blood in the movie, and also there's a lot of Kathy wears red
Hmm.
several notable times. I was thinking of the Wuthering Heights video by Kate Bush, where she
Mm.
runs around in a red dress, and that sort of is the I don't know if that song's, like, from the '80s, but that was a very that's a touch point for, what a lot of people know, and I just was watching a video of Margot Robbie saying that was where she first encountered the concept of Wuthering Heights was in and I listened to that song on the way over, and I also listened to part of the Charlie XCX album, which is partly featured in this film
Mhm.
and on the way over, but yeah, so there's red in the clothing, there is red in the blood, and yeah, it's a good day for red wine.
And I really do think this is a great pairing because the wine's got a little, it's like not super sweet. Anyway, it's perfect. I'm so excited. Okay, so talking about the movie a little bit, what first struck you?
In the beginning, that was actually where they made the most changes to the story, so I was kind of going back and forth, are they not gonna follow it at all? Because they don't give Kathy a brother at all, and it turns out they basically mostly used the father to fill the role of the brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a lot of Kathy and Nellie, who is mostly in the story as a narrator in the novel,
Mm.
but they made them the same age, and it's I think Chinese American actress.
I didn't recognize a lot of the stars, but I mean
No.
that could just be me.
That's Hong Chow, which I've seen, but she's been in some independent films. I don't know a
Okay.
whole lot about her, who plays the older version. I didn't know any of the young
Okay.
actors at all. So
Yeah.
they started out with Kathy and Nellie as childhood friends, and then they kind of bring it. Oh, I'm sorry. They started out with an execution.
Oh yeah.
Just a public hanging,
Uh-huh.
which again I thought was going to come back more, but it doesn't. Except
Mhm.
there's one point when it's mentioned, which
Yeah.
but yeah, so I wasn't sure what was going on with the section, and the section with when they were kids, it was changed a little bit of the dynamic, because instead of the father protecting Heathcliff and the brother bullying him, the father was basically just like he was an abusive dad,
Right.
and Heathcliff was basically saying, well, he can beat me up as long as he doesn't go after Kathy. So Heathcliff was sort of there as the brother figure who protected Kathy, and that was sort of somewhat the basis of the relationship, which is a little bit different than what you get in the novel.
Yeah. I would definitely so I was thinking about how I would describe the film. I think atmospheric, very clearly. Viscous, unfortunately. They're definitely the not the author. The director's name is Emerald Fennell.
I still don't know if it's Fennel or Fennell. Like, I don't know
Okay.
how she pronounces it.
Oh, Fennell sounds so fancy though.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that.
I did not go back and reread any of Wuthering Heights
Mhm.
since the time we met last year, but did do a rewatch of Emerald Fennell's previous films,
Okay.
which are Promising Young Woman and Saltburn,
Mm.
which are films a lot of people don't like very much, but I'm very fond of both of those films, so I had a good time revisiting them.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff that's in there, I was like, okay, well, I expect that out of this movie, the music montage, the fluids. She likes fluids. Oh, the various different bodily fluids. There were a lot of eggs in this one. There's
Yeah.
like a recurring thing where they put Heathcliff and Kathy put eggs in each other's bed when they're mad at each other. So you end up with this just chicken eggs having, it was pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of fluid. So I'm sorry. So what else would you say besides those?
Costumes were very well done, I think. I mean, it wasn't really accurate for the time or really for the setting, though.
They definitely were not trying to do any kind of accurate costuming. And I was trying to remember, because again, it's been a while since I've seen any other adaptations of this, but some of them go into the direction of really highlighting the natural world outside, and then just having more I guess, realistic to the time, or just more not fancy costumes, just and they definitely wanted to fancy with this. And then the houses themselves were like the Wuthering Heights house looked kind of like a stage set. I couldn't even, it was like built out of these like black blocks of something. I don't even know. It did not look like a real house to me.
Right.
And then when they go to the Linton house, they got this like blood red floor. And the room that they make up for Kathy, it's like, this is the most beautiful color. It's the color of your skin. And sort of then as time goes on, it gets like blemishes and stuff on it.
Yeah.
And then there's a point at which I guess she's sick and the leeches are supposed to be on her. And then the leeches have migrated to the wall. So that was definitely, you're definitely looking at those places all the time.
Yeah.
So there's an artificiality to the sets.
Yeah. Well, and I think like the wall and her skin, that part, and the leeches on the wall gave me like kind of the poltergeisty vibes. And I don't think the movie really gets to the ghost story at all.
No, that is, and as I was listening back to our previous episode, I had talked about, it's funny, this is a very like kind of monkey's paw, be careful what you wish for thing of, I think I said on that episode, I wish more people would actually read this book and sort of know what it's about. And then since then, people are reading because of the movie. And I'm like, I think some of you are wrong. But I think the point that I was making is that people just know the love story. And so you think it's not just, they think it's just a love story. But argument is kind of it's a love story and a revenge story and a ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all important. And so then I see people now going, well, it's not a love story. They're mischaracterized. But I'm like, obviously a love story, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can you say it's not a love story?
Right.
Just because the people don't behave very well, that doesn't mean it's not a love story.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this version definitely sort of paints them as like victim of circumstances that they're that they're put in. I mean, you can definitely see why Kathy feels like she has to marry Linton.
Yes, and I think they set that up in the book more like early on that they
Mhm.
need the money, which I think in the book that comes up later.
Mhm.
But she's just from the time she's young in the movie is basically like, "Whoa, there's a rich man over there. I have to marry him." And then
Mm.
that will like sort of help everybody. And you can kind of see the family, like the servants and everything are like, "Well, yeah, she should go marry that rich man." And
Right.
that which would be realistic for that
Mhm.
time and, maybe not completely not for our time either.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so it was definitely that motivation is there, and I think and Heathcliff is mostly although we get to later in the movie, he does do some bad stuff, but I think it's a little bit more like misunderstanding for the most part,
Mhm.
and, you can I think you can understand his motives and her motives from early on.
Yeah. I don't think that Heathcliff is portrayed as bad in this film as he is in other.
But he's not as bad. I'm gonna say about the cast,
Mhm.
I understand why Margot Robbie's in it because she's a big star and I like her and she's
Mhm.
Barbie, but
Right.
but I don't think she was maybe the best for this part, especially as it covers some years when she's obviously 35 years old and she's
Right.
playing like a and it's not that I'd mind the aging thing as much because that didn't wasn't as much of a problem with like the actress who plays Isabella, they kind of show her grow up by like kind of changing her outfits.
Yeah.
But I think Kathy was just acting a little bit more like a teenager, and I'm like, "You are a
Mm.
grown woman, you're dressed like a grown woman," so that was a little bit harder to take.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Heathcliff is he does some of the bad stuff that he does, like, later like, he clearly does not treat Isabella very well,
No.
but
That is the worst part.
it's very okay, so it's as far as I was like, when it would end, they
Mhm.
do cut out the second generation. So Kathy
Yes.
2, who we spoke up about
I know.
quite a bit,
Yeah.
is not there, and Kathy's nephew is who she eventually marries,
Yeah.
is not. So they just kind of cut it off with that generation, which
Right.
again, most of the films do that because it's kind of hard to get the basically two halves of the story in.
Yeah.
Even though for me as a reader, a lot of the stuff that I really like is in the second half.
Right.
And definitely the stuff that where Heathcliff kind of tears his mask off and is absolute villain happens after Kathy dies. But there is Isabella has a dog in the movie, and I had thought I remembered that he murders her dog in the book,
Mhm.
but it's not. Valerie corrected me. It's just that he's like holding the dog by the ears and torturing it.
Mm.
So, and then when I saw the dog, I was like, oh, is this movie gonna have dog torture? And they just took like all they do is like they lock the dog in the room when Heathcliff and Isabella do elope.
Yeah.
But they lock the dog in the room and it like poops on the floor and it's sad, but it does
Mhm.
not get tortured. But then I think one of the biggest, most interesting changes was Isabella I think in the book is just kind of she's a little bit of a simp, like
Mhm.
she's very naive and she there's kind of a thing that I think Emily Bronte is doing about women who fall for bad boys kind of thing, which already existed in literature. That's not something that Emily Bronte invented with Heathcliff or
Mhm.
Charlotte with Jane Eyre. That's something that was there. So I think she's doing that a little bit. And in this, they really when you meet her, when you meet Isabella in the movie, she's quite young. And I thought she was funny. Did you think she was funny?
Yes. I thought the actress that played Isabella did an amazing
Yeah,
job.
that is Alison Oliver, who is also in Saltburn, which is the
Oh,
previous Emerald Fennell movie.
yeah.
Jacob Elordi, who plays Heathcliff, was also in that film,
Okay.
and he was also in the Frankenstein that came in recently, so he's in a lot of stuff.
Yes.
He's 6'6" tall, and I know people have started referring to him as the Creature because he plays the creature in the Frankenstein movie.
Yes, we saw it.
And he is very handsome and very odd looking, but
Mhm.
he's a fave of mine, and I did enjoy seeing him in this.
Yes. In this house, Bill and I saw Marty Supreme last night.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we were afterwards talking about like who we think is gonna get, Best Picture and everything. And I think in this house it's Frankenstein up there for
Okay.
Best Picture. Have you seen it yet?
I did.
Okay.
I liked it. It
Okay.
wasn't quite and this is actually a funny thing to have you talked about Frankenstein on this show as a
No, no,
about the novel?
no.
That's also it's an interesting one to compare for me
Mhm.
because that is a book where the director of the film, Guillermo del Toro, basically has said, "I've been thinking about Frankenstein since I was a kid. I'm obsessed with Frankenstein's monster. I'm gonna make this movie." And he made a movie, which is again sort of like this one. It's very stylized
Mhm.
and has a very it deviates from the book in a lot of ways, and it also kind of does the thing where it makes the creature more sympathetic than you expect him to be. Like they cut out a lot of the ways that he's violent and dangerous.
Mhm. Yes. The creature is very sympathetic.
Yeah,
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 for sure.
which and even more so in the book and against Jacob Elordi, he's the adorable creature,
Yes.
Frankenstein's monster, and but then the parallel is that Emerald Fennell has similarly said, "I've wanted to make Wuthering Heights since I was a little kid."
Mm.
This is kind of the version of the story that I knew when I was 14, and that's kind of how I went to tell it. And now that I've seen it, I'm thinking about that more because I'm a little bit perplexed about how she got to that.
Mm.
What it struck to me is that when it was Guillermo del Toro, who admittedly is a very established director that a lot of people like, and when he said he's been wanting to make this thing all his life, people are like, yeah, that's great, whatever. And then when the woman director has said the same thing, people are like, well, why would anybody want to see a dumb teenager's version of the yeah. So I'm just
Yes.
kind of generalizing, but I think that and I think with all of her films, whatever you think you're getting when you're gonna see it, you're gonna be able to find a justification. So I was hoping that this would be like the best thing I'd ever seen.
Mm.
And I don't quite feel that way, but
Mhm.
I enjoyed it
Yeah.
and definitely again knowing her work and like sort of there are parts of it where I was just like giggling with happiness. And I did so I'm just to go back to Isabella, who they again they make some changes because I think they just get rid of kind of the older generation of Lintons
Mm.
and Edgar is an adult and he's played by an Indian actor,
Okay.
an East Indian actor. And then Alice Oliver is played by a white woman, and they say, well, she's his ward,
Mhm.
and I guess that people expected him to marry her, which I know is a thing that happens at least in 19th century novels a lot.
Mhm.
But she seems very immature when you first see her, and she's just
Yes.
very attached to Catherine. She wears ridiculous outfits that kind of
Mhm.
make her look younger, but she's very funny and like says funny stuff. And then you get to the point, which is almost straight out of the book, where Catherine realizes that Isabella has a crush on Heathcliff and actually tries to warn her not to go that way. And I think in the movie, it does make it seem more like she's just jealous because I don't
Mhm.
think we've seen Heathcliff be that terrible a person.
In the movie?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but whereas I think in the book, you are supposed to think a little bit that she's really like, no, he's going to be bad news.
Mhm.
So then in the film, they add a bit in the middle of Catherine and Heathcliff just having like after Kathy's married, having a sexual affair,
Yeah.
which I don't think that doesn't actually explicitly happen. Like he comes and he wants her and she rebuffs him. So in this movie, they put in a little bit of them reconciling and
Yeah.
making out a lot. I don't know. Did
Yeah.
you think that was sexy?
I am more someone that feels awkward. I can't do
Yeah.
anything that around anyone. I'm very private, and so any kind of like I'm not someone that's like into I will read romance books, but I am not gonna lie, I kind of skim past the
Uh-huh.
spicy parts.
I need to listen to that whole 50 Shades episode you did because I actually thought the part of them actually having the affair was like the slowest part because you're
Yeah.
just like, okay, like it doesn't really advance anything. And then they get back together after her father dies.
Yeah.
And then they split up and then he goes straight in this version to Isabella's room
Mhm.
and is basically like, okay, do you want to sleep with me? Is essentially what he says.
Mhm.
And then he's like, I'm not going to treat you good. I'm not going to this. And she's
Yeah.
like, okay. And you just see, oh, like, oh, there's a couple other things that she does earlier. You're like, oh, she's a little weirdo.
Mm.
And then they elope as they do
Mhm.
in the novel. And then, as in the novel, she writes these letters that are like, Nellie, you have to get me out of here. He's
Mhm.
so terrible. But then you see that, like, they're kind of back at Wuthering Heights and he's telling her what to write. I'm
Mhm.
not even sure what his motive would be.
Mhm.
But he's just, and it's established that he can't write, so she has to write for him. So they're
Mhm.
playing a weird kind of little power game. And she seems mostly into it like, later, Nellie shows up and he's got her in, like, a dog collar or, like, a
Yeah.
chain, and she's like, "Woof." I'm like, "Okay." And those are the moments that I'm like, "This is Emerald Fennell doing her weird shit."
Yeah.
But which I thought it was kind of fun. And I think they show just in the end when Heathcliff gets out of the house, they rush in and, like, get Isabella, and, like, they're like, "We're gonna get her out of this
I
situation."
know.
She rather than him just abandoning her and her being sickly and dying. So
Yeah.
I'm like, in a way, I felt like that was better for Isabella.
Yeah.
That she's not just, like, there to be one of the other funerals. She's there to be a sick freak. All right.
Just some agency in that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so but coming back to the film and it had multiple sexy scenes happening, I did like there was a part of me that felt like in the film, like something had to be consummated
Mhm.
because I felt like it would have been so heartbreaking to see the whole thing and all of this longing. And I guess that's the book, right? It's just complete longing.
Well, that is interesting to me, and we'll get to where they just choose to end the film on. But the two things that they do keep a little bit of the revenge story, but the
Mhm.
revenge is mostly getting revenge on the father,
Mhm.
because he was mean to Heathcliff, and then, like, Kathy sees his dead body and kicks him, and Heathcliff's like, "You
Twice.
should have kicked him more," but it's not, and then I guess he's kind of revenging when he marries Isabella, but again, that's more complicated here. But then there's also the ghost story, and I think there's two things in the novel where, first of all, you have the second generation of characters. So you have Kathy too, and you have Hareton,
Mhm.
and by the end of the book, they're gotten engaged, I think, or at least
Mhm.
they're in love, and they're kind of figuring out how to make Wuthering Heights into more of a home again and to just be more happy together.
Mhm.
And then you also have Heathcliff, like, kind of calling out to Kathy's ghost, and then there's in the end, they're both dead, but maybe they're enjoying each other's company as ghosts.
Mhm.
So both of those, I think, keep the ending from being as bleak.
Yeah.
Whereas this film and then this is the thing that I was like, wow, they went there. The reason that there's no Kathy 2 is that she does die in childbirth as in the novel,
Mhm.
but then they're like, oh, actually she had a stillbirth and she got sepsis
Yeah.
because basically Nellie didn't believe her and
Mm.
didn't get her the appropriate medical care.
Right.
So, and then it basically ends on Heathcliff, like, holding both Edgar and Heathcliff, I think, are kind of sympathetic there in the end, although I'm like, "Edgar, what, you were on the other end of the house the whole time."
He could have done something
Right,
about it.
exactly.
Yeah, and Nellie is much more of antagonist in this version, I think.
And I didn't really understand because Nellie I was liking for most of it that because I think it is implied in the book that they were about the same age and had grown up together.
Mhm.
Even though, like, when you see the most of the film versions, they have, like, an old lady,
Uh,
which it can be, but I think it is implied that it's more that she's a maid of about the same age, and then as they grow up, she grows up and becomes Kathy Two's lady's maid or whatever. But they have them together as kids, and then you're like, "Okay, well, they're kind of friends," and then Nellie kind of resents that, "Oh, she's a servant now."
mm,
Like, because, like, Heathcliff's a servant now, and people are like, "Well, maybe that's not fair," right? But Nellie's
mhm.
just a servant and nobody really,
Yeah.
but she is really, like, not transferring messages between them. I probably, like, with all Emerald Fennell films, I will watch this several times, so I'll
Uh-huh.
see if I can figure out what they were going for, but I'm not really sure if they're just like, "Well, we need an obstacle." But that was rather odd, but on the other hand, why is Edgar, like, refusing to I mean, I understand he's refusing to speak to her because he knows she had the affair, and he's not crazy about it,
Mhm.
but he's still not very worried about her and his child's health until it gets to the point that Nellie's like, "Oh, by the way, she's dying."
Dying.
Yeah, and Heathcliff comes running over on his horse and hugs her as she dies, which is in basically every version.
Okay. Yeah. Nellie, well, they started off and they explain, I guess, that she's the bastard daughter of a lord.
Right, and they're like, "Well, and she's here as a lady's companion, and she's not even being paid." They didn't get into that too much, but that's a weird lot to put on that character
Mhm.
when I'm just like, "Okay, well, nobody ever cares what Nellie wants," but she again, also, it's pretty unforgivable to, neglect somebody, and she kinda dismissed it when Kathy said she lost the baby, and she's probably just ignorant, because she's not a nurse. And she
Right.
says, well, if you didn't bleed, you didn't lose the baby.
Right.
Which, and
Yeah.
you know, we know a lot of horrible things can happen. And
Yeah.
especially, and, you know, it may be, I don't know if they could have, in that era, could have done anything for her anyway. But it just by the time that they discover it, and I think in the book, it's sort of implied that she is starving herself and she doesn't want to live. But in this, it just seemed like she's saying, oh, I don't feel good, and nobody believes her.
Yeah.
And Cliff is writing to her, and Nellie is throwing the letters away.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you and I were talking just before watching the movie, because you were saying you listened to the Twilight episode I just did with Burn Before Reading. Love friends
Yes,
of the pod.
yes.
And that Bella says that Wuthering Heights is her favorite movie. And so, like,
Oh, the favorite book, yeah.
Oh, it's her favorite book.
Let me see if I can find this.
Yeah. So, yeah, just thinking about the comparison of this is Emerald Fennell's version, Bella's favorite love story is Wuthering Heights. What is up with that, in your opinion?
That was such an interesting connection, because a lot of what I talked about on my previous appearance was that I read this when I was 13 and I was very caught up on it, but I didn't really know what to get out of it when I was 13, and I appreciated it, you know, I think more on rereading it. But Bella obviously is like an older teenager, which I'd also reread this and seen at least one of the movies by the time I was a older teenager. And I just reread this last night, in Twilight Eclipse, which is the third book. The Twilight books all have some kind of reference to the literature that Bella's interested in. I think the first one is Pride and Prejudice. The second one talks about Romeo and Juliet a lot, because that's the one where Edward goes off to Italy. And then Wuthering Heights comes up a lot in Eclipse. And first of all, as Edward is teasing her, he's like, that's a dumb book for people to think is a great love story. He's just like, you know, he's like, everybody's a jerk. Kathy is selfish and Heathcliff is, you know, abusive and all these things.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Edward, right? So Bella says, I don't have a page number for this, but it's early in the book, because this is just on my phone. He asks why she likes the book, which is, you know, a nice thing for a dude to do, even after he's been like, your favorite book sucks, which he did. But then he's like, what do you like about it? And she says, I think it's something about the inevitability, how nothing can keep them apart, not her selfishness or his evil or even death in the end. So I think she did glom onto the ghost story part of it. And Edward goes, I still think it would be better story if either of them had one redeeming quality. And Bella says, I think that may be the point. Their love is their only redeeming quality. And Edward, who, as we remember, is a vampire, says, I hope you would have better sense than to fall in love with someone so malignant. And then Bella later on says, and there are videos talking about this, she says, I hope you're smart enough to stay away from someone so selfish. Catherine is really the source of all the trouble, not Heathcliff. I'm like, shit. And then there's a later part in the book where Edward literally reads out a part of Wuthering Heights, and it's about the love triangle with her and Jacob. And there's a point that I think did not make it into the movie where Heathcliff is like, well, if you really want Lynn, I won't stand in the way, even though I would like to graphically murder him, as he describes. And so then Edward is like, I guess if you want to be with Jacob, I won't destroy him, even though he's a horrible werewolf. So bringing that up, although I don't know what the audience for this movie is, I think there's some millennial audience for it, and which would probably be people who grew up reading Twilight. So they're at least exposed to Stephenie Meyer's version of Wuthering Heights.
Okay.
But I think I thought it was interesting when I read these books that you can really look at a lot of this modern fantasy or supernatural fantasy as a sort of misreading of these kind of gothic love stories, or at least, and maybe now I'm maybe being more generous than misreading, but just a personal reading and bringing it in that direction. And so then we've got Emerald's when she's 14, and we even have in the film Isabella at one point when she's young is describing to the plot of Romeo and Juliet.
Yes, that part was so good.
Her version of the plot, to long-suffering Edgar, she's explaining the plot of Romeo and Juliet. And I'm like, oh, that's another one that's in Twilight. So, I mean, to be fair, Emerald is, I don't know, she's in her 40s maybe, so she's a little bit younger than I am. But she is probably Twilight acquainted, would be like, at least with the films.
Okay, now I have to look up how old she is. Let's see. How old is Emerald Fennell? She's 40 exactly. She was
so that's millennial.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's solidly
That's
millennial.
solid millennial,
Yeah,
yeah.
so she definitely could be like, she wasn't a kid when Twilight came out, but she would have,
Oh,
but
yeah.
she would have definitely been the marketing age or whatever for that.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And talking about Isabella, I we can the doll part with Isabella.
Okay, that is what I was thinking of,
Okay.
is that right, after Kathy tells her Heathcliff is not good for you, and then she goes off in a huff, and she
Uh-huh.
has no, you describe it, because you already brought it up.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna build this episode as the spoilers in this. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say, you're gonna have to put spoilers in it, because
Yeah,
we
this
got
is this
yeah.
is a spoiler episode. It's really we're just doing this for fun.
Uh-huh.
So Isabella gives Kathy a doll that she's made of her, and she tells her that she's been collecting Kathy's hair to make this doll. So all of the hair on this doll is Kathy's real hair, and Kathy's like, "Oh, great!" And then they have this elaborate dollhouse, like, and then it's an exact recreation of the home that they're in. And I love stuff like that. I mean, who doesn't love stuff like that? It's so cool to see miniaturized versions, and it's really pretty. And anyhow, so later on, when Kathy tells Isabella that she should not go for Heathcliff and he's going to be bad for her. And you're right, like, is depicted as like a jealous move. It's just totally, what do they call her? A dog in the manger? They say that like several
They
times.
keep saying that too, and I think that's from the novel too, because that may
Okay.
be where I got that concept of just like the dog doesn't want the hay, but it's sitting in the manger so nobody could eat it.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I was
Yeah,
like, a dog in the manger.
that
What is
was
that?
that's like an old expression, but I think it would be like the horse wants to eat, and the donkey wants to eat hay that's in the manger. Dog doesn't eat hay, but the dog likes to take a nap there and
Yeah.
won't get out.
Okay.
So that's kind of it sort of is a married woman who still wants to keep her
Depict
side
him,
piece.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and they depict him as her pet in
Uh-huh.
some ways, and if that's accurate or not, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, but then so Kathy and Isabella have this exchange. Isabella runs off. Kathy comes back in the house and looks in the dollhouse, and her doll has been like brutally murdered, like blood everywhere.
And that was like when I was like, oh, they have a twist with Isabella, maybe, but then I forgot about it. And then when
Mm-hmm.
it comes back, I was like, okay, so she's I almost feel like she's the emerald stand in there. I don't know.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are all of the aspects I think of the film that really got me. I mean, in your like broader understanding of Wuthering Heights and the various films, where does this one rank for you?
Well, one of the things I think I mentioned this to you beforehand, and this all kind of makes sense, but it's not something I'd ever thought about. I just, on the way over here, I looked at like, well, what's the box office for this movie? And it's like, it's pretty good. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
number one in the US, but like, oh, this also did really well globally. And I mean, some of it I think makes sense just because, Margot Robbie's an international star. Charlie XCX did the music, and it's
Yeah.
marketed well.
And
But
Jacob Elordi is also
he's
Australian.
Australian, yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, so you get the British and Australian, and but then I don't know, like when they say global, I'm not sure what other countries it would have opened in. But I was listening to a podcast with Bilge Ebiri, who is an Egyptian American
Mhm.
film writer, and he mentioned, and I'm very excited for when this comes out, that he had watched every version of Wuthering Heights for a article. And I was like, well, how many can that be, right? And then he says, oh, there's so many, because basically every language and every film tradition has a version of this story.
Really?
So it is that well known, at least the Heathcliff and it probably also has to do with Kate Bush as like a global pop star who isn't as
Mm-hmm.
well known here and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So
Mm-hmm.
this is definitely the core of this messed up love story, which
Mm-hmm.
it is, right? It is a love story, right?
It is.
How
It is
can you say it's not?
It's definitely a love. I mean, I cry so easily,
Uh,
but I was sobbing at the
uh-huh.
end. Just I was like, they need to be together, and now he's gonna be all alone.
Right, and that's the second half of the novel, because they
Yeah.
don't, I think there may be some versions where he dies, but
Mm-hmm.
like at the same time as her, but as this is, you're like, he's going to be around for however long until he dies without Kathy, who he thinks is the sort of meaning for his life. So
Yeah.
what, and since you don't have the second generation here, like, well, what else is he going to do?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, before we get to the other versions, the one moment in there where Isabella is saying something about she wants to go see hanging in town.
Oh.
And she says, And Kathy's like, "Oh, I've seen that," because in the beginning you see her there when she's a child. Like,
Mhm.
"I've seen one of those. I don't know why you would want to do that." She goes, "Well, and Isabella says, I think you'd be really interested because of who's getting hanged." And then there's a long pause, and I'm sure we're supposed to think, "Oh, Heathcliff." I'm like, well, did they change the story so much that she's gonna have to like rescue Heathcliff from the police
That's
or
what
whatever?
I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what she says is like, "Oh, they're hanging a woman." And then she sort of goes off in that, which I thought we were going to see and we did not see. So I'm sort of
No.
curious about, but they just kind of threw that in there. So yeah, Heathcliff. So I'm sorry, the different versions of it. So there's the one that I saw when I was young is like there's a classic 1939 old Hollywood version with Laurence Olivier. It's just very much of that kind of, black and white
Mhm.
music with like a big dramatic score, and it very much doesn't have the younger generation at all. It's basically the love triangle with Edgar and Catherine Heathcliff, and I'm not even sure if he marries his sister in that. I can't remember because that's been a long time ago, but that
Mhm.
made an impression. I think that was one of the things we watched that in my senior high school class, and
Oh.
I was like, "Oh, this is so fun!" And I didn't realize I watched a lot of old movies on TV, so I was just very used to it. But
Mhm.
some people have just never watched a black and white movie in their life. So like, what is this? This is cheesy. But if you really like an old Hollywood type of movie, that's a really good one.
Okay.
And then there's definitely versions I have not seen because like I said, there's so many, but even the English versions. There's one in the 90s with Rafe Fiennes,
Oh.
and that one's interesting. And it's weird because I looked it up and it's only like an hour and a half long, but it has both generation stories. So they
Oh.
must do something to be able
Cram
to
it.
cram it all in. But I remember liking it. And he plays Heathcliff, obviously. But what they do that's interesting is Juliette Binoche, who's the actress who plays Catherine. She plays Kathy 1 and then she dies, and then you flash forward 20 years or whatever, and she has a blonde wig and she's playing Kathy 2.
Okay.
So that obviously they're not together as that, but they did that. And I remember that being a neat one, and you can knock it off pretty fast. And then I don't know any of the actors who were in it, but it came out, I think, in 2011, which is it's a more kind of just modern type of film that I remember like the nature shots a lot. That's sort of significant because they did cast a black man as Heathcliff in that one,
Mm.
and they make some changes to sort of reflect what his station would be. And I think that is a really interesting approach to take. And I think some people wished that they had cast an actor of color in this adaptation.
Sure.
And I'm not, my initial reaction was like, because the one from a few years ago, they do that. And I'm like, well, do you really want to make just the character of color just be evil, like naturally evil, like
Yeah.
he is in the book? But that one ends pretty much the same and doesn't have a lot of the evil stuff from Heathcliff.
Mhm.
So I kind of was like, and this one, it kind of is going to depend to me on like how they portray the character,
Mhm.
because I don't like, if you look at the novel, there's not really it's not really clear how you're supposed to interpret this character. Like, he's
Yeah.
definitely seen as an outsider, and
Yeah.
he's referred to as dark, but that can mean a lot of different things at
Yeah.
that time. So I think that version is pretty good. I don't think any of the actors in it are very well known, but it's an interesting
Okay.
one to look up. So I don't know. I will tell you, this is probably still my third favorite Emerald Fennell film so far.
Okay.
I like the other ones better,
Okay.
but this one might grow on me. But
Mhm.
I think all of the Wuthering Heights adaptations that I've seen are pretty worthwhile, like, because it's a book that has so much going on in it. I don't
Mhm.
know. I think if I was just gonna say to look for one other version, if you like classic movies,
Mhm.
the Laurence Olivier version is good.
Mhm.
And if you're interested in seeing one that shows the complete arc of the story, the Ray Fiennes one is good. And then if you just want to see kind of a more modern filmmaker, it's called what I think Allison Anders is a director, if that helps. But it's like the next Wuthering Heights, maybe like 2015 or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
So they're all good, but they all give you different stuff. So it's like, do you
Yeah.
like a classic movie? Do you like a modern movie? Do you want to see one that's more faithful to the book?
Yeah. I want to ask you, I was just trying to think of like to wrap this up, I guess. I'm going to have my
Okay.
favorite scene.
Favorite scene. I should have been. Why don't you say yours first, and then I'll
Okay.
think of mine.
I loved the scene. Loved it. Where it was post-funeral and she's got the veil on and they're all in black, right? But he lifts the veil, but it's a black veil and they kiss. And it's like, it's got the moors in the background and everything. And it very much felt like a doomed love, like a marriage, but like a dark, like they are, it kind of to me encapsulates the story as like their love can only happen in the post grave. And I don't know.
No, that's gorgeous. I like that.
And then he like lifts the veil and they kiss and it's so beautiful. And like I could tear up just thinking about it. And then he lowers the veil back down. And I don't know, to me, that's the whole story.
That's so good and so beautiful, and I have to say that my favorite scene is when he has the girl chained up like a dog because it was so funny. So I think we've crossed the spectrum here, and it was established that she liked being chained up like a dog.
Yes, she was happy,
Right.
seemingly, yeah. So, but yeah, I think that those two scenes encompass the film.
Right.
Beautiful love story, doomed love, and then a woman thinks that she's a dog. Yeah.
Very much.
Very.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been great. And also, I think if you're going to do a watch with this, I think we nailed the drink food pairing. I think that my regular book guests are going to be upset. Because why don't they get chocolate? But you know what? This is my first film. And so, Carrie, you get chocolate. And I think it was perfect.
And I will do like Kathy, and I will underline chocolate, 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 because that's very exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you for spending some time with me and my guests for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.